Week 16 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 36 running backs I'm ranking this week going into the semifinals, so a crucial week for fantasy owners. Number 1, Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles. So this week, decent matchup with the Commanders. Saquon last week, one of his worst games of the year. But also remember, he didn't get a lot of touches, and most of that first half, he was on the sideline with his helmet on. So this week, I believe he's going to bounce back. Saquon's having a monster season. He's looking to get that 2,000-yard season under his belt. And this week at the Commanders, it wouldn't be surprising to me if he goes out there as a monster game. Number 2, Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. And Bijan Robinson, he's lived up to the build this season, being a 5th, 6th pick overall in fantasy drafts. So last week, over 100 yards on the ground. This week, an easy matchup versus the New York Giants. And I think he goes out there as one of his better games of the year. Number 3, Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. So Jahmyr Gibbs now, he definitely moves up the rankings with Montgomery out for the season with a torn knee. But like I said in other videos, Jahmyr Gibbs, I still don't believe he's going to get 25-plus touches. I still believe 15, 20 touches per game. Obviously, more receiving out of the backfield I could see for Jahmyr Gibbs as well. And this week, it's a good matchup at the Chicago Bears, where their defense has had trouble weeks here stopping anyone. So I think Gibbs goes out there in this high-powered offense and in a ball game at Soldier Field and has a good game. Number 4, Derrick Henry of the Baltimore Ravens. His numbers have definitely tailed off a little bit over the last few weeks, and there's a few factors in there. If they're not at the goal line, some of those touchdowns are taken away. In the last couple of weeks, Lamar's putting up monster numbers where it's about passing the football and him just running the football. So Henry this week, a tougher matchup once again versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the better defenses in the league. But I still believe weekly, at worst case, he's a top 5 option. Number 5, Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals. So this week, a good matchup versus the Cleveland Browns. Brown, ever since Zach Moss went out with injury, he's doing it all. He's been a workhorse, catching the football out of the backfield in between the tackles, and he's one of the more dynamic backs in the league is Chase Brown. So this week versus Cleveland, I think he goes out there and has another good performance. Number 6, Josh Jacobs at the Green Bay Packers. It's been a great offseason signing for this Packer team, and Josh Jacobs, he's been a workhorse. Seems like 25, 30 touches a game he gets. I know in the receiving game, he's not all that great, but he doesn't need to be. He gets all the goal line touches. First, second down, all those touches he gets as well pretty much. And this week in a great matchup versus the New Orleans Saints, I think Josh Jacobs has another nice game like he did last week. Number 7, James Cook of the Buffalo Bills. So Cook, it's been a solid season for him, but there's some weeks where he disappears and he only gets 5, 6 fantasy points. And then there's weeks where he's getting that 20, 25-point fantasy game. So this week, a good matchup versus New England. This offense is playing on another level the last 2 weeks, especially 42 points in Week 15 at the Rams, even though they lost 44-42. And then last week, 48 points where they came out of the gate red hot, 14-0 at the Detroit Lions. So this week, once again, I think James Cook in this offense has a big ball game. Number 8, Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. Devon Achane, it's been a solid second season for him, and now we know he's been the workhorse this whole year where Raheem Mostert couldn't stay healthy, and he's at 32 years old. We didn't expect Mostert to stay healthy, and Achane's definitely improved as a receiving back out of the backfield. So I know early in the season his numbers took a hit a little bit with Tua out of the lineup, but ever since Tua's returned, it's at least 14 or more fantasy points, it seems like, for Achane. So this week in a matchup versus San Francisco, where the scoring could be decent between these two teams, and Miami's back home, I think he has a bounce-back performance, even though last week it was still a decent game. Number 9, Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams. So Kyren Williams, he's turned things around over the last few weeks, and rightfully so. His numbers were dropping off when Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua returned to the lineup. So this week, a good matchup at the New York Jets. Their defense can't stop anyone, and this could be a high-scoring game between these two teams, I believe. Number 10, Joe Mixon of the Houston Texans. So Mixon, last week it was a down game, but this season we haven't seen 2 games in a row where Mixon can't produce. So I know this week a tough matchup, Saturday ball game at Arrowhead at the Kansas City Chiefs. Joe Mixon, I think he bounces back in this game. He's a 3-down back. Obviously, could catch the football out of the backfield, run physical in between the tackles. With Mahomes playing in this game, I think they're going to run the football even more now, once again, this Houston Texan team, where they're going to emphasize the run, work off that play action, and Joe Mixon might be in for a big workload this week. Number 11, James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. James Conner, it's been a solid season. He got a contract extension a few weeks ago from this Cardinal team, and this week it's a great matchup with the Panthers, where they just gave up over 150 yards on the ground to the Cowboys, including 149 on the ground to Rico Dotto. He's been a solid back all season long, And the main thing, he's been healthy pretty much the whole season as well. And this week at Carolina, I think he has a top 12 performance. Number 12, Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. So I don't know if he's going to play in this game. It's a Monday night game. It's a tricky situation, and he's hurt with an abductor/groin injury is Kamara, and he didn't return in last week's game. But Kamara, if he does play, I know this offense is decimated. No Derek Hart, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Taysom Hill, but Kamara, he does it all in that offense. Catches the football out of the backfield, gets force-fed with carries. And this week at Green Bay, if they wanted to pull off an upset, that would be their only chance that he would work his way into production. 13, Breece Hall of the New York Jets. So Breece Hall, it's been a decent season, but obviously I don't think he was worth that 4th pick overall where he was going most fantasy drafts. And now this offense has been back to a pass-first offense ever since the acquisition of Davante Adams for this New York Jet team. But Breece Hall returned from injury last week. He put up 13 fantasy points in PPR leagues. And this week it's going to be a high-scoring game, I believe, with the Rams coming to town. And Breece Hall has been a good receiver out of the backfield. So this week, even if the numbers take a little bit of a hit, he's still a fringe one back for fantasy owners. 14, Aaron Jones, the Minnesota Vikings. So it's been a great season for Aaron Jones, and health has always been the issue with Jones. When he's healthy, he's a productive back and one of the better backs in the league. And we obviously have seen that this season for Aaron Jones with his new team in the Minnesota Vikings. So this week, a decent matchup at the Seattle Seahawks. We saw Josh Jacobs go out there in Seattle last week, have a big game. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if Aaron Jones has a similar type of game. 15, Zach Charbonnet of the Seattle Seahawks. So Charbonnet, I believe, is going to get the start once again. Kenneth Walker, he's out with a calf injury the last 2 weeks, and that's a tricky injury, especially for a running back to come back within a month from. So this week, not a great matchup versus Minnesota, but there have been running lanes over the last few weeks versus defense. And Charbonnet, he could do it all. He's a 3-down back, catch the football out of the backfield, physical in between the tackles. And I've said it in other videos, if he was on another team, he'd be starting 10, 15 teams in the league easily. Zach Charbonnet. 16, Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. So Chuba Hubbard, it's been a solid season for him. He got a contract extension a month ago for this Carolina Panther team. And this week, a good matchup versus the Arizona Cardinals, where their run defense really hasn't been that great, I believe. But even though overall their defense has played better. So Hubbard, coming off a down game versus the Dallas Cowboys last week, I think he bounces back. And now with Jonathan Brooks, who's been out over the last couple weeks, and obviously he's out for the season, he's got that full workload once again. 17, Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. So Jonathan Taylor, definitely a struggle it's been for him over the last month of the season, with teams that just load in the box and forcing Anthony Richardson to try to beat him. So last week in Denver, he had an easy walk-in touchdown. It's that ball before he crosses the goal line, and then a touchback. So you know he's going to have a chip on his shoulder after an embarrassing play like that in last week's ball game. And Jonathan Taylor, we've seen some good games out of him this season. So this week, in a good matchup with Tennessee coming to town, it wouldn't be surprising, like I said, chip on his shoulder, and he goes out there and has a good game. Just the only thing, his receiving numbers have definitely taken a hit this season. 18, Isaac Guerrero of the San Francisco 49ers. So the last man standing, third string running back, Isaac Guerrero. Last week, he wasn't 100%, played with a sprained foot. I thought he looked decent at times. 11.5 fantasy points in PPR leagues. And this week, a decent matchup at the Miami Dolphins, a defense that's had trouble all season long stopping opposing offenses. And this could be a high-scoring game as well. And Guerrero, he's got great speed. He's got track star speed, like I mentioned in videos, and a decent receiver out of the backfield as well. I know Deebo Samuel took some work from him in that game, but still, it's Guerrero's backfield. 19, Rico Dowdle of the Dallas Cowboys. So believe it or not, 3 games in a row, over 100 yards on the ground. And this Cowboy team, they've went with a new philosophy of running the football more and being in more favorable downs with Cooper Rush, your quarterback, over the last few weeks since Dak Prescott's out for the year. So Dotto, like I said, 3 games in a row over 100 yards. The only thing is this game script could go against the grain for this Dallas Cowboy team, where they got to chase points and throw a whole lot, even though Dotto has showed receiving prowess as well early in the season. So now that he's been the 3-down back over the last month, the numbers have gone up, and this Cowboys team has been winning games 3 out of 4. 20, Rachaad White was staying in the same game at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. White, one of the better receiving backs in all pro football. Him and Bucky Irvin, one of the best 1-2 combo backfields in all the league. And this week, it's a good matchup at the Cowboys, where for the majority of the season, they haven't stopped anyone. So I think Rachaad White, he goes out there and he has a productive game. 21, Brian Robinson of the Washington Commanders. So you figure his numbers will go up for Brian Robinson. With Austin Eckler out with the concussion problems, McNichols, Rodriguez not really factors in the backfield, but Robinson, his numbers the last few weeks haven't been great. And also, he's been dealing with injuries on and off over the last month of the year. So this week, a tough matchup as well versus Philadelphia, one of the more stout defenses in the league. And I think this game is going to be on Jaden Daniels if they want to pull it out and get the victory. So I think Robinson is an RB2 this week. 22, Tony Pollard of the Tennessee Titans. So it looks like Mason Rudolph's going to come in there quarterback. But to be honest, I don't think it matters who's in there quarterback. Both those quarterbacks just haven't been productive. This offense, besides him and Calvin Ridley, haven't been productive. And this week at Indianapolis on the fast track, I think Tony Pollard has a good ball game. But like I said, with the quarterback play and team stacked in the box sometimes, his ceiling is low for putting up points. 23, Bucky Irving of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So what a rookie season it's been for Bucky Irving. And this week, a good matchup at the Dallas Cowboys. Irving went over 100 yards last week, where we know he's not been 100% the last few weeks here with hip and a back injury, but he's played every game, is Bucky Irving. And this week, Sunday night at Dallas, I think he could go out there once again and be a solid RB2 for owners. 24, Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. So Ramondre Stevenson, it's been an okay season for him, but this offense obviously doesn't have much going with the top weapons in the passing game, Demario Douglas and Hunter Henry. So teams are forcing that roll the football. And Stevenson, his receiving numbers have definitely gone down this season. So this week, it could be a tough sledding type of game at Buffalo, where they're going to get off most likely to an early 10, 14-point lead. They're going to have to chase points and have to abandon the run. But I still believe Stevenson finds his way most weeks, at least to get 8, 12 fantasy points. Worst case, 25, Tyrone Tracy of the New York Giants. I've thought Tyrone Tracy, he's been a decent rookie this season for this New York Giant team. I know last week Evan Singletary, a goal-line touchdown he vultured him from, but this week a decent matchup in Atlanta. Fast track, good receiving back out of the backfield, and we don't know who's going to be a quarterback. Tim Boyle, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, all these players, they're bad options. Leave Tyrone Tracy as a flex option, could go out there and be productive. 26, DeAndre Swift of the Chicago Bears. So I thought last week he ran well in one of his better games in the last month for DeAndre Swift in the matchup with the Minnesota Vikings. So Swift be a 3-down back easily. Obviously, we've seen it with the Lions a few years ago. We saw it last season with the Philadelphia Eagles, and we've seen it a majority of this season with the Chicago Bears. So Swift, quick running back, catch the football out of the backfield. And this week, the juices are going to be flowing a little bit for him versus one of his former teams in the Detroit Lions, where they traded him away to Philly a few off seasons ago. So I think Swift could go out there, have a decent performance. 27, Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tough matchup at Baltimore, especially if they're down early and often. We know Harris don't really catch the football out of the backfield, with Jalen Warren being the third down and passing down back over there for the Steelers team. But Harris, most weeks you got to rely on him getting a decent yard rate, 70, 80 yards, and finding the end zone. So this week in Baltimore, it definitely could be some tough sledding. 28, Isaiah Pacheco of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Pacheco, he's been back for 3 weeks now, and to say the least, the numbers just haven't been there for Isaiah Pacheco. I think he's not 100%. I think this Chief team brought him back a little early to get his legs under him, get him ready for the postseason, and rightfully so if they want to make another Super Bowl run and win it. So this week, Holmes is going to play in missed games. We've seen him with ankle injuries play throughout the whole playoffs with it last season. So this week versus Houston, I don't think the ceiling is that high for Pacheco, where he's not even catching the football really out of the backfield as well. 29, Jerome Ford of the Cleveland Browns. Now he's going to get a lot of work as Jerome Ford, especially they're going to be trailing in a lot of games. Dorian Thompson-Robinson in their quarterback now, with Jameis Winston pulled from the starting lineup. And also Nick Chubb, we know, is out for the season with a broken foot. So this week in a matchup at Cincinnati, if they want to keep pace with them, I think Jerome Ford's going to be a factor catching the football out of the backfield and could be a decent flex option. 30, Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So it's been a bust season for Etienne, going second, third round in fantasy drafts, but last week he actually had a decent game. But like I said, he hasn't put up the numbers. He hasn't lived up to the ADP as ETN, and this offense is decimated, so I think they're going to lean on him a little bit in this game. And this could be a close game at the Vegas Raiders, where both these teams are pretty much playing to see who can have a higher draft pick. So whoever wins this game, obviously they don't want to win most likely, where they want to get that high draft pick this season. 31, Jalen Warren of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Warren, his ceiling's been 8-9 fantasy points in PPR leagues. Last week he didn't do much, only 2.5 fantasy points is Warren. But this could be a game, once again, where they're trailing early and often and have to throw the football. And Warren, we know he's a good receiving back out of the backfield. We've seen he's been decent in between the tackles at times as well. A physical running back is General Warren. So this week at Baltimore, this could be a potential high-scoring game between these two teams, or it could be a mediocre scoring game like we saw a few weeks ago when they had the matchup in Pittsburgh. 32, Alexander Madison of the Las Vegas Raiders. So it looks like he's going to be the starter once again, Madison. Zamir White on IR. Sincere McCormick, he got hurt. He was limping to the locker room on Monday night. Short turnaround. And this week it's an okay matchup versus Jacksonville Jaguars, but all season long, besides the couple weeks, McCormick was the starting running back for this Vegas Raider team. The backfield's been a mess and something you really don't want to touch for fantasy football owners. 33, Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos. Another backfield you don't really want to deal with if you're a fantasy owner. No one has broke out this season in the backfield between the three backs, Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, and Audric Estime at times getting work. And this week, not a great matchup with the Chargers. I believe their run defense, for the most part, it's been decent this season. So Javonte Williams, ceiling's not high. It's been a three-man committee for the most part. And this Bronco team's built around Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton, that offense. And the defense playing well. 34, Gus Edwards of the Los Angeles Chargers. Another play with not a high ceiling. If you don't get a goal line touchdown, he pretty much hasn't had production. But he is the starting running back over there for this Los Angeles Charger team. And J.K. Dobbins, he's been a big loss for this offense, obviously, where the numbers all around have gone down for this Los Angeles Charger team. So this week, a tough matchup. Thursday night, Denver Broncos coming to town. And like I said, if he's not getting the goal line touchdown, he's only scoring 5-6 fantasy points. 35, Justice Hill of the Baltimore Ravens. So Pittsburgh Steelers coming to town. Justice Hill had a big game, 17 fantasy points in PPR leagues last week versus the New York Giants, including a 40-yard plus touchdown reception. So this week, Pittsburgh coming to town, like I said. Justice Hill, he's been a solid third down, passing downs back for this Raven team. But this week, I don't think the volume is going to be there. And I don't think there's going to be garbage time like it was last week as well, where he got a lot of touches towards the end of the game. In the 36 and final back on rankings, Tyjae Spears of the Tennessee Titans. He came off a 2-touchdown game last week. I know some of it was garbage time, but Tyjae Spears and Pollard coming into the season, I thought it could have been a 60-40, 50-50 type of split between these two backs. But Spears, he's been banged up a majority of the season, missing a lot of games where he just hasn't been involved. So this week at Indianapolis Fast Track, I think Tyjae Spears could carve out an okay role, getting maybe 10, 12 touches in this game. And especially in PPR leagues, we know he's a good receiving back out of the backfield. So that's the top 36 backs I'm ranking in a crucial Week 16 of the fantasy football season.